Hello again, my friends, and welcome back. My friend Brill has asked me to come back and tell the story again due to some technical issues we had last time. I do hope that it doesn't cause too much delay and we haven't left you too disappointed. So today, I will be once again telling the story of the fairy nurse from the Lilac Fairy book by Andrew Lang. Now, once there was a little farmer and his wife living near Kulgaro, and they had among them 3 children, and my story happened while the youngest of these children was still a baby. Now the wife was a good wife enough, but all her mind was on her family and her farm, and she hardly ever prayed without having to fall asleep, though she thought some time spent in the chapel was twice as long as it need be. So, friends, she let her man and her 2 children go before her to Mass one day, while she called to consult a ferryman about a disorder upon one of the cows. She was therefore late to the chapel, and was sorry all the day after, for her husband was quite upset about it. She was very fond of him. Late that night, he was wakened up by the cries of the children calling out, "Mother, mother!" When he sat up and rubbed his eyes, there was no wife by his side. We asked the little ones what had become of their mother. They said that they saw a room full of nice little men and women, dressed in white and red and green, and their mother was in the middle of them, going out by the door as if she were walking in her sleep. So out the door he ran, and searched everywhere round the house, but neither tale nor tidings did he get of her for many days. Well, the poor man was miserable enough, for he was fond of his woman, as she was of him. He used to bring the salt tears down on his cheeks to see his poor children neglected and dirty, as they often were, and they'd be bad enough for only a kind neighbor that used to look at them whether she could spare time. The infant was away with a nurse. About 6 weeks went by, and just as he was going out to work one morning, a neighbor, that used to mind the women when they were ill, came up to him and kept step by step with him to the field. And this is what she said. "Why, 'twas just as I was falling asleep last night I heard a horse's tramp on the grass and a knock at the door, and there, when I came out, was a fine-looking dark man mounted on a black horse. He told me to get ready all in haste, for a lady was in great want of me. And as soon as I put on my cloak and things, he took me by the hand, and I was sitting behind him before I felt myself stirring. 'Where are we going, sir?' says I. 'You'll soon know,' he said, and he drew his fingers across my eyes, and not a ray of light could I see. I kept a tight grip about him, and little I knew whether he was going backwards or forwards, or how long we were about it, until my hand was taken again, and I felt the ground beneath my feet. Again he drew his fingers the other way across my eyes, and there we were before a castle door, and in we went through a big hall and great rooms all painted in fine green colors, with red and gold bands and ornaments, and the finest carpets and chairs and tables and window curtains, and grand ladies and gentlemen walking all about. At last we came to a bedroom, and with a beautiful lady lying in the bed, and a fine bouncing boy beside her. And the lady clapped her hands, and in came the dark man and kissed her and the baby, and praised me, and gave me a bottle of green ointment to rub the child all over. Because rubbing strange ointments on strangers' babies, great way to make money. Apparently, I don't know. Seems awkward. Well, the child I rubbed, and sure enough, my right eye began to smart. I put up my finger and gave it a rub, and then stared, for never in all my life was I so frightened. The beautiful room was a big rough cave, with water oozing over the edges of the stones and through the clay. The lady and the lord and the child were all weazened, poverty-bitten creatures, with nothing but skin and bone, and the rich dresses were all old rags. I didn't let on that I found any difference, and after a bit says the dark man, 'Go before me to the hall door, and I will be with you in a few moments, to see you safe home.' Well, just as I turned to the outside cave, who should I see watching near the door but poor Molly? She looked around all terrified, and she says to me in a whisper, 'I am brought here to nurse the child of the king and queen of the fairies. But there is one chance of saving me. All the court will pass near Temple Shambo next Friday, on a visit to the fairies of Old Ross. If John, my husband, can catch me by the hand or cloak when I ride by, and has the courage not to let go his grip, then I'll be safe. Here comes the king. Do not open your mouth to answer.' I saw what happened with the ointment. Because, spying and stuff. The dark man didn't once cast his eye towards Molly, and he seemed to have no suspicion of me. When we came out, I looked about me, And where do you think I was but in the dike of the Rath of Cumro? I was on the horse again, but this time the horse was nothing but a big piece of ragweed, and I was in dread every minute that I'd fall off, but nothing happened till I found myself in my own cabin. The king slipped 5 guineas into my hand as soon as I was on the ground, and thanked me and bade me good night. I do hope I'll never see him again. I got into bed and couldn't sleep for a long time, and when I examined my 5 guineas this morning that I had left in the table drawer, I found 5 withered leaves of oak. Bad luck to the giver. Well, you might think that all the fright and the joy and the grief of the poor man was in when the woman finished her story. They talked and talked, but we needn't mind what they said until Friday night came, when both were standing on the mountain road crosses, the one going to the road to the Ross. There they stood, looking towards the bridge of Thor in the dead of night, with a little moonlight shining over Kilmacarridmid. At last she gave a start. By this and that! Here they come, bridles jingling and feathers tossing. John looked, but he could see nothing. She stood trembling, with her eyes wide open, looking down the road to the ford of Balaculia. I see your wife, said she, riding behind and on the outside, just to rub against us. We will walk on quietly, as if we suspected nothing, and then when we are passing I'll give you a shove. If you don't do your duty then, woe be with you. Well, they walked on easy, and the poor hearts beating in their breasts. And though he could see nothing, he heard a faint jingle, and tramping and rustling. And at last he got the push she promised, and he spread out his arms, and there was his wife's waist within them, and he could see her plain, but suddenly such a hullabaloo rose as though there were an earthquake. He found himself surrounded by horrible-looking things, roaring at him and striving to pull his wife away. But he held on tight and bade them be gone, and he held his wife as though it was iron his arms were made of. Bedad, and in one moment everything was silent, and the poor woman lying in a faint in his arms of her husband and her good neighbor. Well, all in good time she was minding her family and her business again, and I'll go bail. But after the fright she got, she did take more time to pray, and avoided ferrymen all the days of the week. It's hard having anything to do with the good people without getting a mark from them. My brave nurse didn't escape more than any other. One Thursday she was at market of Enniscorthy, when what did she see walking among the tubs of butter but the dark man, hungry looking, and taking a scoop out of one tub and then out of another. Oh, sir, says she, very foolish. I hope your lady is well and the baby. Pretty well, thank you, he says, rather frightened. How do I look in this new suit? He says, getting to one side of her. I can't see you plain at all, sir, she says. Well now, says he, getting around her back on the other side. Indeed, sir, your coat looks no better than a withered dock leaf. Maybe then, says he, it will be different now. And he struck the eye out of her with a switch. Friends, she never saw a glimmer after that to the day of her own death. And I hope that teaches you a lesson. I mean, fairies are very wondrous beings and all, but that doesn't always mean that they're your friends. And just because a fairy looks beautiful and brings you and grants you wishes, doesn't mean they aren't doing something for their own ends. But on the other hand, perhaps some people will want you to pray a little more than you think you ought to, and maybe you should think on that. But in either case, I do hope that my tale has found you well, and things are proceeding in a way to give you good faith, in whatever it is you choose to believe. Thank you, and I'll see you again.